Welcome back, Diabetes 180 family. We are live once again. So we're taking a little break from our anti-aging longevity series, and we're going to talk about what I love to talk about: diabetes, specifically carbs. Okay, and whether or not you have diabetes, this is definitely something that we know is a hot topic today. Whether or not you could have too many carbs in your diet, what carbs are good, what carbs are bad, are fruits unhealthy. So I really hope that I can simplify things tonight. Okay. Like all of our lives, we're not going to be here very long. I expect 20 minutes to maybe 20, 25 the most. So make sure you're tuning in and asking questions. By the end of this demonstration, I like to call it or thought experiment that I'm going to take you through, you're going to understand what makes a carb a good carb versus what makes a carb a bad carb. Okay, I guarantee you that this thought experiment, this mental experimentation that I'm going to take you through is going to make it crystal clear whenever you're thinking about carbs, when how to split something between a good carb or a bad carb. Right. If you have questions in the chat, let us know. Of course, as I always like to ask, greet us in the chat also, letting us know you're watching, and joining us in this live tonight. All right. So this is something also I think would be good for us to pass on to others, because I guarantee whether or not you have diabetes, you have friends, family that are confused, seeing you eat fruits and telling you that's a lot of fruits, right? That aren't you going to gain weight? So we're talking about diabetes, but we're also in a huge way really talking about maintaining a healthy weight, because I have seen that the mainstream evidence, mainstream information that we're getting as far as nutrition is keeping us sick and keeping us overweight, right? When we eat how we are designed to eat, it is not only very easy to reverse chronic disease, but it also becomes very simple to see our ideal body weight become the norm, right? I believe if everyone ate this way, you could see a whole population scale change when it comes to the numbers, the rates of obesity. We'll see it plummet, okay? Because I guess I'll give you a spoiler. We are designed to eat carbs. We're designed for carbs. Um, so, Goldsmithers, thanks for watching from Las Vegas. That's awesome. All right. Yeah, if you have any questions on carbs specifically, we're going to be addressing that tonight. I think you have a question about apple for dessert. Um, that's actually something very good. That's a very good point. Hold on to that question there. So I think what Goldsmithers is asking is a very important observation. She ate apple for dessert and saw her sugars go up. We talk about what happens when we eat carbs in a high fat environment, and I'm going to address that during our live. So definitely keep watching Goldsmithers. Okay. If you have any other questions, guys, on carbs, this is it. This is actually part of a longer series. We usually do like a 2-day event where we call it a carbohydrate masterclass. But this is like the second part or portion of the second part. I try to keep things condensed. I'll definitely give you more information if you need it on future lives. Okay. Um, Another thing I was going to say too, just to imagine for me, like the this advice that bacon is better than bananas, right? There's advice today that eating high protein or high fat is the key to weight loss, weight management, and diabetes management and diabetes reversal, right? But think about that logically. Any diet that encourages you to eat high fat foods versus fruits, it should cause us to think and question. Okay, so tonight I'm going to appeal to our logic. I'm really going to appeal to our logic. And for our Christians, our Bible believing Christians, I want to remind us that if you believe in the story of Genesis, we were created in a garden, right? There's a reason why when we go to a produce aisle or we go to a garden for this, so there are carb centered food sources, right? When you're talking about starchy vegetables, when you're talking about legumes, when you're talking about intact whole grains, and of course fruits, they're in abundance in nature for a reason. I believe it's because God has designed us to our meals, our food, to consist of complex carbs, right? And we're going to see that very quickly. All right, so let's go ahead and go into the topic for tonight, right? Carbs, what are they? Let's start. We're going to start with a very basic definition of carbohydrates. Okay, so carbs at a very basic level are one of three basic food groups. So when you talk about categorizing foods or into macronutrients, there are three types of macronutrients. So protein, fat, and carbs are the three groups or macronutrients that you find in every food source. Okay, so give me a moment, I gotta make sure I got my laptop charged here. But yeah, so when you're eating something, uh whether it be animal or plant, right, you're eating foods that come from one or all of these sources. So carbohydrates are a very, very broad term. We got to break down to make it clear enough what is good and what is bad. All right. Okay. Um, we have another question about macronutrient percentages. That's a very good question. So the for carbohydrates, especially when we're eating in a low fat environment. So in this channel, we promote making sure that we are eliminating, if not limiting, animal foods and foods high in fat. When you do that, an ideal fat percentage intake wise for diabetics specifically to reverse insulin resistance, most studies agree that to maximize it at 15%. So no more than 15% of your calories coming from fat. Protein is a little different. It's a little more complex of a question, but most studies agree that a standard recommendation for protein intake by weight is 0.8 kilograms. Sorry, 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So you take your weight, convert it to kilograms, multiply that by 0.8. And that's how many grams of protein. Then you can obviously decide how much percentage that needs. So the only percentages I really focus on is fat intake. Once you keep your fat intake low, especially as a diabetic, now you're increasing your chance to become sensitive to insulin, more tolerant of glucose or carbs, and now you can eat carbs without limit. You can eat, of course, protein in moderation, and as long as we're addressing the root cause of insulin resistance, and that is a high fat diet. Okay. um we have plenty of topic lives on that topic. We'll go deeper for sure in future ones, because I think it's so important for us to understand how our body responds to fat intake, and when it comes to insulin resistance and tolerating carbs. Because at a very basic level, let me just stop here. At a very basic level, what is diabetes, right? Diabetes, if at a very basic level, is when your body is intolerant to carbs, right? So if we can learn to become more tolerant of carbs, meaning our carbohydrate intake can go up without the blood sugar spikes, guess what's happening in the body? Your body's healing. Your body's healing from diabetes, right? If the very symptom of diabetes goes away, guess what? The disease is going away. So you can even measure your carb intake, right? Your carb, there's even a measurement of carb to insulin ratio if you're taking insulin. If you can increase your carb intake, right? I should say, if you can eat in a way that allows you to increase your carb intake, you are healing from diabetes. And this is what we promote. Eating a diet that is lower in fat, especially saturated fat, you can increase your carb intake, right? Eating more carbs show without blood sugar spikes, watching your A1C drop, your diabetes is reversing, is getting better. Okay. So that's the approach we take. So if there's some confusion, definitely go back to our all past videos. We present evidence-based approach. So we cover all the scientific studies and population studies that really show what happens when our body is in an insulin resistant state and to reverse it. So definitely have more questions on that. Please refer back to those videos, and reach out also personally. I love to help any way I can. In every one of our videos, we have description links to to have a free consultation. So we would love to assist you. We don't charge for our consultations. All right. So take advantage of that. Use it and share it. Okay. So simple carbs, on the other hand, right? If we're gonna split the different between a complex carb and a simple carb. A simple carb is something that's simple, right? It's easily digested. It causes spikes in our blood sugar levels. Simple meaning it's not complex, right? Complex carbs um, are going to be what's found holistic in nature, and we're going to describe what that really looks like on a day-to-day meal base. Okay, so please pay attention. I promise you, when we get to the end of this, you're going to see what meals look like when they're consisted of complex carbs versus your refined or processed carbs. All right. So our refined carbs, or is another word for, I think, for a simple carb, is a refined carb. Um, they are more processed than complex carbs, right? Because during the refinement process, a lot of the good stuff is taken out. The fiber, minerals, and vitamins, a lot of it's taken out, right? Especially the fiber. When you take fiber out of what's the original carbohydrate source, one thing happens: it increases its shelf life. Okay, when you take the fiber out of a food, it increases its shelf life. So that is good for food industries. Refining, of course, involves more than that. There's different methods of refining carbs, but the whole point of refining carbs, is to make them last longer on the shelf, um, allow them to make more sales by increasing their texture and flavor profile, right? And of course, to make more money, as people can eat more, right, without feeling full. Okay, so these are some methods of what I guess we call processing or refining carbs. Breaking down removes the bran around removing the bran from the grain, and grinding the grain to make flour is an example of breaking down foods. Extraction processes, for example, when you take a sugar cane or sugar beet and you take the sucrose out of it to make table sugar, right? You extract something from it. Concentrating, when you take a blend of like from a fruit, you concentrate it down to a fruit juice, right? It goes from all these steps. You're going from complex to refined. Okay, so I want us to give, actually, let me actually, before I go into this, I want to give a little analogy. Okay, some foods we know are bad for us. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that sugar is bad for you, that soda is not good. It's more confusing about, I think what's more confusing for us is like, well, are there certain fruits we should avoid? Are potatoes now off the menu, right? Is corn bad? Like, can you have too much corn? So I want us to really simplify it and make it logical. Okay. So this is the analogy. And please, please, please tell me if I lose you, if this doesn't make sense. Okay. Let's say I told you that you can carry a certain weight in your pocket of currency, right? You can only have a certain amount, let's say 5 pounds, 10 pounds, I don't know what, but there's a certain weighted amount of currency in your pocket. Okay. What are you going to choose to carry? Are you going to choose? You can choose bills or coins. I don't know about you, but I'm choosing bills, because bills, whether it be a dollar bill, a $20 bill, or $100 bill, number one, is lighter than a coin, right? And number two, it holds more value than a coin, like a quarter or a dime or a nickel. Those coins are going to be heavy in your pocket, getting you to your weight limit faster without giving you much value. Okay. Complex carbs, or carbs found in as they are in nature, right, with most of their fiber and all the micronutrients intact, not removed, unrefined, are like bills in this scenario. Not only do they, unlike coins, like have more value or more bang for your buck, but compared to refined carbs, complex carbs do not add much to your weight. Okay, and you're going to see this. Calorically speaking, Complex carbs are lower in calories, right? So when you're eating a lot complex carbs and shunning the refined, you're going to see that you're eating more nutrient value, but getting less of a caloric wet scale on the caloric scale. You're actually eating less, and you're eating in a way that's going to promote weight loss, or at least keeping you at an ideal weight. All right. So we're going to give some food examples. So these obviously are obvious. I think I could skim through a lot of the refined carbs, but some of these aren't so obvious, like white rice, bread. But we know sugar, pastries, candy, and but pretzels. Some people say, well, pretzels, is that good for us? But you got to ask yourself, in order to determine whether or not it's complex or refined, a simple question: what did it look like when it was in nature? Okay. What did that rice look like? Was it white in nature? No, it wasn't. It was probably brown, right? The bread, does bread look like that in nature? No. So the farther something gets from nature, the more refined it is, the more something good has been taken away or something bad has been added to it. Okay. Um, and you might argue, some might say, well, in Asia, China, people eat white rice as a staple and they have the lowest rates of diabetes, right? That's true, but they also probably eat a lot less other processed junk, right? So there's definitely a spectrum to it. There's many societies and cultures that eat potatoes, um, or plantain, right? And these carbs, right, don't increase their rates of diabetes. It is something different. And just to answer the first question I was asked, it's really the amount of saturated fat in our diet that's really causing the problem. I could go all night on that point alone, but tonight we decided to focus on carbs. So let's just stick with carbs. We'll talk about fat in another video. But carbohydrate, good versus bad, should be clear, right? So when you're looking at complex carbs, whether they be bananas or sweet potatoes, you're asking yourself, how close is this to the divine hand of God? How close is this to as God designed it, right? The further it is from nature, the further it is from God's hand as God designed it, right? The more disease promoting it is, though, or I should say, the more devoid it is of nutrients that can actually promote health, right? So good carbs are going to be close to nature. Now, something happens to foods. We have options. We could take a fruit and make dried fruits, or fruit smoothies or sorbet, right? So there's some minimal processing that fruits and other foods can go through, right? But if you're choosing something like dried fruit, you will preferably get one that doesn't have added sugar, right? So when you're asking the question of how refined this is, it's not only what's been taken away from it, but also what's been added to it. So you want something that's not had sugar or other unhealthy ingredients added, okay, as found in nature. We want. So let's go, but I want to stick with the money and the currency analogy. Okay, so let me go through this. So these are more examples of refining process of carbs. You go from whole wheat to white flour, which making white flour pasta, instead of, might be better to actually eat whole wheat flour pasta. So whole wheat flour based pastas or lentil based pastas, because they're closer at least to nature. There's a spectrum to it, right? It's not like all or nothing, right? If someone really wants to eat pasta, I'd be okay with even eating a whole wheat pasta versus a white or traditional pasta that has a lot of more of its fiber removed. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense, right? So there's degrees to it. There, it doesn't mean that means I can never eat pasta again. There's a lot of lentil based pastas. You want if there's your food is refined or processed, you want minimal amount of processing going on, right? You don't want to go from something brown to something completely white and devoid of its original fiber. Okay, so there's definitely degrees to this, right? But yeah, going back to this analogy, you guys tell me, what would you do if I told you that you could hold only a certain weight in currency in your pocket? Are you choosing bills or coins? Because the bills would be your complex carbs, your coins would be your refined, and those who are eating whole food, they're eating foods that are rich in carbs, right? But they're noticing something amazing. Their weights are going down. They're eating more carbs while weights going down. Counter what we hear today. Carbs make you fat. You eat too much carbs, no matter where the carbs come from, they'll make you fat. No, we have to differentiate simple versus and the complex, right? Because they both do not behave the same. They do not, right? Yeah, I like them bills. So let's go. Let's go to some real life examples, okay, in our last 5 minutes or so. All right. So I'm going to have a choice of a carbohydrate rich meal. Okay. Lewis told me that carbs are back on the menu, right? So I'm going to give carbs another try. We broke up last year. This year, starting this month, I'm going to start eating carbs again. Are you going to choose Special K cereal or oatmeal? Look at the difference a little bit, right? So these two breakfast items, okay, and also if you see at the top, I have a example of, let's say if someone's on a trying to do a low calorie diet, okay, you're trying to lose weight, so you're trying to limit your intake to 1,300 calories for the day, right? So right at the top, I have a limit or a calorie budget, right? Keeping with the currency analogy of 1,300 calories. If I eat Special K with a glass of orange juice, right? That estimates using a quick estimation of calories in a typical meal, 350 calories, right? I'm glad you said oatmeal, most of you guys, right? Hopefully all of you guys, because oatmeal not only is going to fill you up, ask yourself really realistically, right? What's going to fill you up more? And when I put these calculated measurements together using a calorie counter, I included fruits in that oatmeal. So you got fruits in that oatmeal. You got berries and a smoothie instead of juice. So of course, a smoothie is not a fruit, but it's more refined, but it's less refined than juice. Okay. Even so, even though this food is gonna make me feel full, right? It's got less calories in it, 270 calories, right? So this is more like the bills, giving me more nutritional bang for my meal buck, right? But keeping me low in calories, right? Just what we want for any weight loss regimen or weight maintenance plan. All right, so let's say for lunch, we're sticking with carbs, right? And I'm gonna eat white flour pasta, traditional pasta with some chicken, right? Or some kind of chicken gravy base. And the calories tell this whole story, tell the difference between a whole wheat flour pasta with veggies instead of meat, right? 605 calories versus 322 calories in your whole wheat vegetarian dish. Okay, which is gonna fill up our calorie budget quicker, right? We could see which one. All right, and let's go on to dinner. And for dinner, I can have, again, sticking with carbs, I'm gonna have fried rice, cooked with oil, typically, as it is with veggies and other greens with apple juice, and comes out to, and it's a small amount. This is just a small portion, okay? 361 calories versus quinoa with veggies and an apple instead of apple juice. So we're eating the complex, original, close to God's hand, right? As not refined. 210 calories. Less calories, and I guarantee you this quinoa dish, I don't know if you guys have eaten quinoa before, is going to be more filling than your fried rice. All right, it's going to last a lot longer. All right, at the end of the day, all right, at the end of this presentation, right, this is where I want to get to really. At the end of the day, the simple versus complex carbs tells the whole story. In a meal of simple carbs, you've got 1,429 calories. You're over your budget, right? And 1,429 is not a lot, actually. Depending on your weight, you could probably still lose weight with these meals, possibly, but you're gonna be hungry. You're gonna be hungry because many of these foods, the cereal, the pasta, is devoid of its nutrients. It's been stripped of. It's back down to the coin versus the dollar. You're losing nutrients on one side, where the other side, not only are you nutrient dense, right, but there's less calories, right, in that oatmeal, in that whole wheat pasta, in that quinoa dish. You have 800. It was shocking to me. 897 calories. This is why there's actually been studies, guys. I don't know if you realize this. There's been studies that actually try to make people gain weight on a whole food plant-based diet, eating mainly carbs. So we're talking everything from sweet potato to yams and corn and brown rice or quinoa and fruits, right? Eating whole foods and compared to a standard diet, you can't gain weight unless you force yourself to overeat. And in a food, and when you're eating foods that are complex, that are full of fiber, and all the nutrients that come combined, packaged in them, you're going to be satisfied at the end of the day. You're not going to be looking through the fridge. Of course, there's still that pesky thing called cravings. We still have our cravings. I know that doesn't mean that, once you eat healthier, tell me about it. Your cravings won't just go away. But as far as feeling satisfied, this is the way to do it. Eating more carbs, not less, but making sure that the carbs are complex. They're bills and not coins. I guarantee do this long enough while limiting or preferably avoiding animal foods. You're going to see not only does the scale go down, but your satisfaction for food goes down. Your relationship with food improves because now you're learning to eat as you were designed, eating foods that as they are found in nature, right? So I encourage you guys to stay on this path, this health journey. I know a lot of information maybe is not so new to everyone, but I should be a reminder that there is a way to eat until you're satisfied. You don't have to starve yourself, okay? But you just got to make better food choices, eating the complex, leaving the simple, and you're going to see that your blood sugars improve and your weight goes back to the ideal body weight that you're looking for. All right. So as always, if you need more advice, counsel, support, check the links in the show notes. It's in the description section if you're watching on Facebook, usually below this video, or actually, I'm not sure it's below or above. Yeah, YouTube is below. But definitely look for those links, and we'll support you any way we can. All right. So, beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. We'll see you next week at the same time.